Welcome to the Differentiated Instructional Module 1. As a result of the information presented in this module, you will be able to explore the factors of differentiation, including readiness, interest, and learning profiles or learning styles. All right, here you see, and there's a Google code for this information that will be provided to you in the Google Classroom. The performance standard number 4 for differentiated instruction for the Teacher Keys Effectiveness System. The goal is for the teacher to challenge and support each student's learning by providing appropriate content and developing skills which addresses individual learning differences. We'll also talk about content, process, and product at the beginning of the presentation, just to give you some background information on differentiated instruction. So let's begin our journey with Carolyn Tomlinson, an expert with differentiation. She says, in the end, all learners need your energy, your heart, and your mind. They have that in common because they are young humans. How they need you, however, differs. Unless we understand and respond to those differences, we fail many learners. Carolyn Tomlinson also has defined differentiation by saying that differentiated instruction is a teaching philosophy based on the premise that teachers should adapt instruction to student differences. She also says that teachers should modify their instruction to meet students' varying readiness levels, learning preferences, and interests. So let's learn a little bit about differentiated instruction. We'll talk about content, process, product, and the learning environment in this video.
There are four main components to differentiated instruction. And differentiation happens with teachers when they vary the content of their instruction, the process that students take, the products that are created, and finally, the classroom environment. When you vary the content of your instruction, first you need to present the instruction at different levels, presenting students with different learning styles, and all students can benefit from presenting information in a variety of ways. Although a student may not be one type of learner, presenting information in a variety of ways ensures that more students have the opportunity to comprehend what you are teaching them. When you vary the environment in your classroom, you can change both the physical things or the habits and routines of what's happening in your classroom. You can use strategies such as flexible seating to allow students to work where they're most comfortable. You can establish a growth mindset to help students understand learning as a series of goals to be accomplished instead of grades that they'll achieve. Students can develop risk-taking skills, independent thinking, and collaboration skills as they co-construct their learning with the assistance of their classroom community. To vary the process, you are looking at how students are completing a task. I like to think of these as pathways. Sometimes as teachers, we are very used to controlling the path of our students can take, but what we often forget is teachers everywhere teach the same content differently, proving there are multiple effective ways to get to the same results. This can happen in your classroom too. If we let go of the need to control what path our students take and focus more on supporting them on their own path in order to achieve certain learning goals, then students automatically have individual tailored learning. Using the gradual release of responsibility helps us to understand that students are ready for independent tasks at different periods. Allowing students to use manipulatives or visuals or organizers in order to have successfully complete a task is also another way to differentiate instruction. Time is one that is easily understood. We all have students that finish early and some of them that just take forever. Helping to support students as they finish a learning objective at their own reasonable pace is an important skill. Differentiating the product is one of the easiest things a teacher can do to differentiate instruction. It begins with focusing on allowing the students to choose how they will complete a set of criteria by giving them options and choice and giving them ownership in their own learning. It helps put some skin in the game for them. They're not simply just receiving the instruction, but they're actively participating in the construction of their learning. Some call this approach the inquiry-based learning. Allowing students to choose multiple pathways is an important tool to begin using in our classroom. Open-ended tasks allow you to give the same looking product, but not expecting the same product produced by each student. This gives multiple entry points for students to access the same task in different ways. Being responsive to student needs is the beginning of how to start looking at differentiation and gives the framework to begin to understand why and how we differentiate. We will be digging deeper at this concept in upcoming lesson series, so stay tuned. Differentiated learning tasks take into account the learning preferences, interests, and readiness of our students. We need to ensure that these features of differentiation trickle down through our teaching and learning cycles and impact our planning, instruction, and assessment.
All right, Carol Ann Tomlinson has provided this great graphic organizer to just show you that teachers can differentiate according to content, process, product, and learning environment, just like you learned from the video. But you must also think about they can differentiate according to a student's readiness, interest, and learning profile. So we will focus on that section now. Let's focus on readiness first. Readiness uses baseline and ongoing data on students' experiences to determine the best course of action for the student's instruction. So the first stage of readiness includes a pre-assessment. All right, when you think about your students, some students may be less ready and may need more help. So they might have to have some more opportunities. It might be more structured activities, and the pacing may be different as well. More advanced students may need either open-ended, abstract, and complex activities. The pace may also be picked up or brisk for their work. For pre-assessments, it's important to determine a student's readiness before you start teaching the information. There are a variety of pre-assessment strategies that you can use to do so, and we'll talk about them in the next slide. When we differentiate tasks according to a student's readiness, we're creating tasks that are a closer match to a student's skill level and understanding of the topic. All right, so once we have information on where students are in their understanding of a particular topic, we can begin to differentiate instruction according to their readiness. We can also vary pacing and the level of complexity to determine their degree of independence, as well as the amount of support and structure that we must provide them. Here are a variety of pre-assessment strategies. I will also be including in the differentiated instruction Google Classroom a variety of materials and assessments, inventories, and plenty of things that will help you with differentiating. All right, so let's learn a little bit more about readiness and pre-assessment.
This video is going to be discussing pre-assessment in the classroom. Pre-assessment is an organizational tool to help teachers identify differences between current performances and desired performances. It allows teachers to determine what the students already know and what they are capable of doing. Not only does it measure students' readiness, their interests, or their learning profiles, but it also provides evidence to help teachers effectively match instruction with the needs of their students, including decisions about content, pacing, materials, grouping, and specific learning activities that the teachers can utilize in the classroom. Pre-assessments are most useful when they are administered before the lesson or unit is going to be taught. This way, they provide the most up-to-date information about students' strengths and needs. when they serve as an invitation to the upcoming learning experience rather than act as a barrier, when they pique students' interests in what they are about to study, when they include just a few key questions and are aligned with key lesson or unit goals such as facts, skills, understandings that they are essential for students to know, when they gauge student understanding in addition to their knowledge and skill, making sure that they are unbiased and not restricted to those with just enriched backgrounds, when they seek to discover what students do know rather than confirming what they don't know, when they give students different and multiple ways to show what they know, and last, when they uncover potential connections between the student and the content. It is important to always let your students know that the information that you're collecting and gathering from these pre-assessments are used specifically just to make instructional decisions and not for grading your students. That way anxiety isn't a key for your students while they're taking these tests. And finally, by understanding the areas in which students are struggling the most, the teacher is actually able to better support those who are underperforming by creating more effective lesson plans.
Oh, great. So we've talked about readiness and focusing on pre-assessments, and now we're moving to student interest. So the interest is a child's affinity, curiosity, or passion. It's important at the beginning of a school year or throughout the year to learn about your student's interest. Often teachers will use interest inventories or surveys or do different activities at the beginning of the year to learn more about their students. So be thinking about what you will be doing in your classroom. I'll provide a variety of resources in the Google Classroom. And if you have some that you'd like to share with me, that'd be great as well. But think about how you will be finding out what your students are interested in. Knowing the various interests of students helps the teacher create a hook necessary to engage their students in new content and skills. With student interest, students attach what they have been learning in class to things that they already find interesting in their own lives. Making that real-world connection is extremely important for students. The interests of these students can be determined in a variety of ways. So you can decide what ways you will be using to determine the student's interest. Let's learn a little bit about students' interest in differentiated instruction.
In some way. You want to add to that, Melissa? It impacted our world in some significant way, right? Absolutely. So you want to pick what would be a historically insignificant event that would not be. Okay, David? Inventing a whole. At the beginning of the year, to determine the interest of my students, I have them fill out a survey and ask them what their favorite time period in history is. So I do get a good feel for what they're interested in individually. But then also just throughout the year during classes, when we're having class discussion, you can really learn a lot from your students if you actually listen to what they have to say, and you can pull in on their personal experiences. What did you come up with?
I came up with the 1938 Pecan Shower Strike of San Antonio. We're really interested in civil rights and that whole time period where everyone's kind of turning against each other and
the Red Scare.
The Red Scare.
Okay.
We're doing the Little Rock crisis when it was the first time that schools were integrated.
Minority court cases.
Court cases in the 1940s. With a project like this, it's completely based on what they're interested in, you know. And if the particular class is interested in the Civil War, I can adjust my my lesson plans to spend more time on the Civil War. Or when assigning projects in class, I can give them options as to, would you like to study this aspect? Would you like to study this person, this event? And then have it all come together. Many times I'll do that activity and have them choose what they want to study. And then they present each of their topics to the class so that everybody is learning about everyone's subject.
The thing that's the best about doing it probably based on your own interest is that you'll be a lot more motivated to do it, and you'll try, not that you don't try harder anyway, you'll try harder and you'll just be really into it, and so it doesn't feel like that much work.
We are our own boss. We have complete control over the situation, and when we have that, we can expand and go on to other different things.
You'll probably go deeper and get more in depth on what you're researching rather than something you don't even like.
When you're grouping students by interest, it is a delicate process because you do want to make sure that, as high school students, they're not just getting to get in a group together with their friends. And I do tell them that. You heard me today. Tell them that, okay, we need to think about, all right, am I going to work with my best friend? Are we going to be on task? Are we going to be productive? So you do have to be very careful. And even kids that aren't GT, that aren't advanced, that aren't honors kids that, struggle in their classes. This is something that if you give them something that's exciting for them, they can be successful at it. And then once they're successful at it, what a great feeling for a student, for a person, to think that I just did something and it's meaningful and I did well at it.
Already there. We need a smaller picture.
Absolutely, because then they have confidence in themselves. So modifying, changing your instruction to fit their needs. And it's difficult to do. It is. It takes time, and it takes, because there are certain things that we have, every content area has to cover this, and this. But again, if you can somehow incorporate what they are interested in, it makes the learning process for that particular topic so much more relevant and so much more applicable. But then it also spreads over to the other things, the other pieces of information that you're teaching too. It just enhances the classroom atmosphere overall. I love Good Things. Good Things is just an opportunity for students.
All right, so with the learning profile, each individual has a learning style that best meets their needs. Often you can have more than one learning style that is your primary learning style. And once you figure out what your learning style is, as the teacher, it's important for you to know that information in terms of your planning, but it's also important for students to understand what their learning style is and how they learn best. All right, so with your learning profile, it just focuses on how do students learn. So some students are visual learners, auditory learners, or kinesthetic learners. Students vary in the amount of time they need to master skills and learn the information. Students can learn a variety of ways, and in your classroom, think about your environment, your cultural influences, visual influences, auditory, and kinesthetic. So when we talk about learning styles, we think about the way students learn, the way teachers teach, the way curriculum is structured, and the way learning is assessed. So quickly, let's talk about learning styles. We know that there are 3 types of learning styles. We have visual learners who learn by sight, auditory learners who learn by hearing, and tactile or kinesthetic learners who learn by touching or moving things. So when we talk about visual learners, we know that those learners in our classroom prefer to see information such as pictures, diagrams, and demonstrations, picture words and concepts they hear as images. They also can be easily distracted in lecture with no visuals. They can also be overwhelmed by intense visuals accompanied by lecture. They also benefit by using charts, maps, notes, and flashcards when they study. All right, next we have the auditory learners. Auditory learners prefer to hear information spoken. They can absorb lecture with little effort. They may not need to take careful notes to learn the information. They often avoid eye contact in order to concentrate. They may read aloud to themselves, and they like to hear background music when they study. And finally, we have tactile or kinesthetic learners. They prefer to touch as the primary mode of taking in information. In a traditional lecture situation, they should write down information and important facts. So they may be using a graphic organizer to do this. And they create study sheets, when they create study sheets, they need to connect to vivid examples, and role playing can help them learn and remember important information. So let's hear a little bit more about student learning styles.
Created using Powtoon.
All right, so I hope you have enjoyed the Differentiated Instructional Module 1 that focus on just understanding what is differentiation and differentiation according to a student's readiness, interest, and learning profile. There are plenty of resources that will be available to you in the Google Classroom. Here's the Google Classroom code that you can use to find those resources. Thank you very much.